Okay. Can we start now?
1 मिनट सर.
Okay.
रिकॉर्डिंग शुरू हो जाए सर, फिर शुरू कर दे.
हर्षद पारिक सर
शुरू
और
कर
हर
सकते
तनखा जी
अनम्यूट
अपने आप
करके
को अनम्यूट कर सकते हैं. ये
प्लीज
कोहोस्ट है
अनम्यूट
तो
एंड देन स्पीक पारिक. ओके, नाउ प्लीज स्टार्ट.
Okay. We can start now?
यस.
यस सर.
Okay. Okay. Good evening, friends. This is our third dialogue on brain, mind, and consciousness. And before we start on this topic, I like to say some few things. First thing is that there is no authority in this field of brain, mind, and consciousness. And we have to find out for ourselves uh, by looking within, especially the brain. We cannot study like a scientist, but the mind and consciousness, that is, I think it is it's within us, and we can really look very carefully. And another thing is that we are trying to use words to express what we want to communicate. But the real thing in this field is non-verbal. And sometimes the words can create confusion in this field. And the other thing is that what we know is very, very little compared to what we don't know. Like the whole planet Earth is only a very small dot in the universe. And on this Earth, there are 7 billion people, and we are just one of that. And there is an infinite universe, and we know very, very little. And even we know very little about our own mind and brain. The brain has tremendous capacity to do certain things, which I will tell you what some brains are able to do it. And brain, I will not say anything because it is the scientist, it's a matter. And that matter is fixed in space, and so it can be studied like an object. The brain can be an object, and the scientist who is working is the subject. So there is a duality between subject and object in the study of brain. But in the study of mind, it is our own mind and the mind is looking at itself in if understanding. And so the subject and the object, or the observer and the observed, they are one in this study of the mind. And what we mean by mind here is the thinking thoughts which are coming and going, and whether we like it or not, these thoughts are popping up. And at one time, there is one thought, say politics, then it may jump to sports or some music. And there is a continuous kind of change happening in our mind, which is a thinking. And most of the time, we are not aware of how this jump taking place from one thought to the other thought. But when we become curious about this process of thinking, then sometimes we are able to catch up a thought when it's about to start. Because in what is involved in thought is the memory, and that memory is stored maybe in the brain or somewhere. And then um, there is a language also we have studied. So the combination of the memory plus language is also a kind of memory, because we have learned a language and all these words are stored. So thinking is coming from memory, and there is nothing new in thinking, because thinking comes from the past knowledge, and it is continuously changing these thoughts. But there is something else I feel, and many people, even Krishnaji has said, that there is something apart from thinking, is what is called awareness or choiceless awareness, which can see the thoughts arising. And generally, this awareness is not awakened in most human beings, even though they may use the word awareness. What is going on in the minds of most people is just the thoughts coming and going, and there is no awareness, there is no curiosity. And because of that, um, many reactions come in relationship, like fear, anger, jealousy, loneliness, and all these things are not observed. And so they complicate our life a lot in relationship with people. And when this, when we uh, begin to feel awareness, the real, when we can really look at the beginning of any problem, and then we feel that something new, a new dimension has come in our life, and we feel very curious about it, because it was not there before. Our mind was just going round and round from one thinking to another thinking, and getting angry sometimes and feeling lonely. But when this dimension of awareness, which is not thinking, when it comes, it can see the thinking very clearly. And then it makes life very, very healthy, happy, creative, and we feel that something new has happened. And there is also the corresponding change happens in the brain also, and the whole body. And one can feel that something new has happened in the brain. And when this was happening in my life in 1970s, it was, I was very, very curious about what is going on in the body and brain. And I was writing letters to Krishnaji also, describing what was something new, movement has started going in the, happening in the brain. And I was just curious. I did not know about it much, but I began to see things very, very beautiful, and very strange, as if looking for the first time everything. But beyond this awareness, which I am describing, I feel that there are even many different dimensions which I have not experienced. But many people, like Krishnaji talks about touching the source of all energy, ground. And other thing is that, like a mathematician, Ramanujam, he was um, a devotee of a goddess. And when he was getting the whole theorem, the final formula, uh, without doing any effort. So this is something, and he himself did not know whether it was true or false, but he was noting down all these formulas. Uh, Harsh, your upside down your image. Harsh,
Okay.
yeah, okay. So this Ramanujam, he was a young man and he was very passionate about mathematics and many formulas in the final form without doing step by step were coming. So the brain has amazing capacity and different people have a different capacity like that. And another thing is that there is some people say that there is a kind of energy which is in our body which is not active. But in some people, due to either doing some yoga or meditation, that energy is activated. And they say that it is at the base of the spine. And when it is activated, it goes to the brain and it begins to transform the brain. And they call it Kundalini. And Krishnaji knew a lot about it, but he was not talking about it because he said it is very dangerous. But I had met another person called Pandit Gopi Krishna from Kashmir, and he was an expert. He had many years of experience in Kundalini, and he was writing amazingly beautiful books. And he was a very ordinary person, but after this, and he suffered a lot for many years, 12 years, suffered a tremendous pain in his whole body. But when this process was stabilized, he began to write beautifully. Many poems started coming to him. And first, these poems came in the language which he knew, like Hindi and English. And then even other languages like Persian, Urdu, and even German language poems started coming to him as if somewhere from the space he was getting directly in his mind. And so again, I am trying to say that the brain has amazing capacity, and it seems that so much thing is already there around us. We are not able to catch it. But when this brain becomes sensitive or some parts of it becomes active, we can catch something which is there in the space. And I feel that whatever human beings have thought about it, what they have discovered, everything exists in the space which we think that it is empty space, but it is not so. There is tremendous energy exists in the empty space, like all the electromagnetic waves which are coming from radio stations, television stations. They are in the space around us, and only we need a proper instrument to catch these vibrations, and then we can begin to know a lot. And so our brain, I feel that it is not just a static instrument, but it can also work like a transmitter, which can transmit thoughts in the form of waves, though the scientists have not been able to catch these thought waves. And and the brain can also work like a receiver. And so sometimes people are able to communicate across space with the thought waves, what they call telepathy. And I don't know whether scientists still are not very sure. They have not able to understand, not able to capture these thought waves which are being transmitted. And some people have the ability, what they call clairvoyance. And Krishnaji could also uh, can see what was in the mind of some people when they came to him. And he said that he can see, but he would not like to know about it, this clairvoyance. And if it is really true, this clairvoyance, it means something is transmitted from that person. And what that person thinks, even he doesn't speak, even if he thinks, those thought waves are spreading all around, and some people can catch these waves. And so, and also Rupert Sheldrake, he believed from his scientific work that there are morphogenic fields that are transmitted from even animals and birds. And he said that when, say, a monkey in one part of the world it learns a new trick, like opening a water tap or something like that, then that trick, other monkeys living far away, in even in other countries, they are able to learn this trick. And that is due to this morphogenic field which are transmitted from the brain or from the body of human beings or animals and birds. And there is also Sri Aurobindo. He was trying to, through his sadhana, he was trying to bring down something what he called super consciousness. And he felt that if that super consciousness comes into one human being, then it will be possible for many other human beings to catch that kind of consciousness. And other thing is that generally we have three states of consciousness. One is like being awake. Right now we are fully awake. Then other is the state dreaming. And then when we are sleeping and some dreams are going on. And then there is a dreamless sleep. That is the third, when we are sleeping, but there is no dreams. But then Indian philosophy says there is a fourth state of consciousness. They call it Turiya. And that probably connected with what they call Samadhi. The that state of mind is completely different than what we experience, like even awareness, because people like Ramakrishna and Raman Maharshi, they could live in that state for many, many days at a time, and they were not aware of even mosquito biting or even scorpion biting. They were not in this world at all. And they had to be beaten up sometimes to bring them back to the normal state. And Ramakrishna was in that kind of state for almost 6 months, and somebody used to come beat him up and just push some food. And even when later on, when he was fully alive, he used to go into that samadhi and there was no heartbeats, no breathing also. And the scientist like Dr. Sarkar, he was very skeptical, but he had kept the mirror in near the nose of Ramakrishna, and he found that there was no breathing. If there is a breathing, there will be some pattern will be formed on the mirror. So there are amazing things human beings are capable of, and we don't know. Mostly we judge them based on our partial intellect, and we say that, oh, they may be all living in illusions, but I don't think so. And great people have lived in India. They have gone very deep into the mind of their own mind, not by reading and repeating the scriptures. So, and even Krishnamurti said there is a mystery beyond the powers and capacities of the mind here. So there is so much there around us, only we are not able to capture it. Just like during the daytime, the stars are there. We don't see it because there is too much light. But in the darkness, all the stars, we are able to see it. Similarly, so many things exist around us, within us, and it depends on us how sensitive, how curious, how passionate we are to capture all this. And on requires is only curiosity, I feel. And it's not like we are saying that there should be no motivation because Krishnamurti said like that. But the motivation to go very deep is good, I feel. One must be very curious and can discover many things. As scientists are very curious to discover new things, human beings have a great capacity to go in the inner world and discover many things which many people in the past have felt it. And so I have said enough thing. Thank you. And now we can uh, have a dialogue or comments or anything.
I and request Mr. Kamlesh Modak to make Vijay Chablaji co-host. Please make co-host Vijay Chablaji. After Harsh Tankha, please make Vijay Chabla co-host.
Okay. So can you hear me? Is that okay?
Yes.
I think Harshad ji has said very many interesting things, which I mostly concur with. If I can summarize, firstly, there is, let me call it the outside world, the scientific world. And we have learned a lot about the scientific world. We have developed all kinds of skills. We are talking to each other just now through, it's almost like magic. But what has been unexplored, except by a few people, is, I would call it the mind, except what can be done in the mind, with the mind, all kinds of capacities that human beings have that we have hardly explored. 1,000 years ago, we had not explored the physical world, and we were unaware of such things like we have now. We can phone each other and television and flying through the air. So that would have been just as surprising in the physical world. But in the same way, we have not, in the inner world, I'll call it the mind, we have not seen yet what the human mind is capable of, except for a few people. And so And yes, there is a lot that we can do, but this brings up an interesting question. And Krishnamurti warns about this. He says that there are things like siddhis. People can attain all kinds of skills in clairvoyance, in maybe reading other people's minds, but these may still be distractions. Definitely they're there, they exist. And just like there may be no problem in getting to know science extremely well, there may be no great difficulty in getting to know how to communicate directly between minds. And maybe human beings will learn how to do that at some point. But he seems to be pointing to something else, something that is free of even of all that. And maybe we can call it, for today, because he calls it different things, we can call it super consciousness. So something that is even beyond this deeper and kind of consciousness and capacities that the mind may have, which is even beyond all of that, and which is capable of seeing all of this, and which is capable of seeing the whole pattern of existence, of time and space, of the possibilities of the mind, of the possibilities of the body, of the possibilities, and how all these things are connected and interrelated. So that capacity, because that capacity to see the whole rather than in particulars is what allows us to see what is true and what is the right action in any given situation, which helps us to move towards a right relationship. And being able to read somebody else's mind may still not show us how to be in a good relationship. So these particular abilities, though they're very interesting and in a way, no problem in investigating them, they may not still give us the capacity for to live without conflict, to have good relationships, to be able to have goodness in us. So that is quite an important question. Do all these things, for example, what do they have in relation to goodness? Do they necessarily mean goodness, or can they also be misused for evil, or for in a bad way or in a good way? They may still be like that. So I think that is one comment that I would like to make. Another one, really to do with the first things that Harshadji said, is actually to point out in a different way what he has already said, that we are communicating with words. But that doesn't mean, because we are struggling, and even I'm struggling just now to express whatever it is that I see, that doesn't mean that each of us is not able to see something. We may be able to see things, and despite seeing them, we not be able to describe them. We may not have the words. Think of yourself going to, I don't know, some country that you don't know, say Russia, and you don't know Russian, right? Now, what will people think as you try and explain anything, even the simplest things to them? They won't have any idea that you know about these things, because you can't communicate to them what is that you're seeing. Now, I think that about these deep matters, we are all in that situation. We are actually seeing a lot more than we are able to express. Anything that anyone is saying, even in this meeting, is only a small fraction And just imagine, what can we say about the mind in 1 or 2 sentences? We can't even say very much about a tree in 1 or 2 sentences. Or a cup of coffee, we can't say very much in 1 or 2 sentences. So whatever we are saying is partial in that way. It's only a part of the thing. Also, I may not be seeing the whole thing, but in any case, whatever I say is always going to be a part. And one of the purposes of a discussion like this is that we are all looking at something from different sides and bringing out different aspects of whatever we are talking on, mind and brain and so on. And this is giving us a chance to have a more put together. Our minds can, if we are attending carefully, not disagreeing and agreeing, but just listening, then we can put together the whole picture and we can begin to see things more deeply than are being said. You know, that, we can look beyond the words. We can read between the lines. We can see much more than is being said. But this means a very active listening on our part. And Krishnaji always demanded that. He would sometimes say, are you doing this now? Are you looking at it for yourself? Don't just follow my words. Look, please, it's useless. Don't go to sleep. Please see, do you see in yourself what I'm talking about? Do you see the fear if I'm talking about? Do you see it in yourself? So this is a very important part, I feel, of one, to look beyond the words and recognize that they're partial, and the other to be looking inwards at the same time as we are listening, to be looking to see, how do I see this thing? What is it that I see? Is this matching up? Does it make sense to my own perception of things? So this is a very important part of this inquiry into consciousness and mind, which is what we're engaged in just now. So, and in fact, if we are to discover about the capacity for clairvoyance or the capacity to be aware of another person's thoughts and so on, somebody may tell us about it, but it still comes down to us asking within ourselves, okay, how does this, let me see, does it operate? Can I be sensitive? On what level, in what way do I have to be sensitive so that I can be, what kind of listening is this, that I can listen to somebody else's feelings? The usual word we use for this kind is, how can we be sensitive to other people, right? So we have a sense of who they are and what is happening with them, because a sensitive human being perceives what's happening to somebody, how they might be thinking, how they may have sympathy for them, understand their feelings, understand their sorrows, understand and be able to act in that situation to help them. Because in the end, a main concern, even of this talk, and for each of us, I think, at least it is for me, is action. How do I act correctly in the world? How can my actions be such that they are in some ways towards the good for myself and for others and for everyone? How can my actions be? And being sensitive, being attentive, recognizing what is happening with somebody else, what is happening, or with the environment, not just people, or, understanding the nature of things, going deep, going beyond. All of this is what helps me to have the right, good action in my life. So I'm also, we are not trying to define what mind is. We are not trying to interpret Krishnamurti. We are not trying to just bandy words. We could do that. I mean, some people will do that. Some people will just talk about words, right? And they are just words. So, but in some senses, all of this is connection with our action in the world. what is our action in the world, and what is good action, what is right action. And for that, we have to understand all these things. So I think that's probably enough for me to say just now. Let me give somebody else a chance.
Chabraji can speak.
Vijay Chabda sir. Parekh sir, Vijay Chabda sir will like to say something.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
You
Yeah,
can,
okay.
right.
I'm muted now. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
we are able to
Yes,
hear you.
yes,
We are
yes,
able to
yes.
hear you.
Yeah, I wonder. You know, whatever Tankha ji just said about sensitivity, that's actually one observes in a way throughout the day in all interactions. It's very interesting. At what level and to sense anything in oneself or around oneself, except at some obvious level, demands, doesn't it? The mind is not preoccupied, just available. Because then that kind of thing happens naturally. But the mind is always in action because of maybe external demands or in some train of thought. So that's very interesting when one happens to sense what at what level. I have another one question, or maybe we can investigate. Harshad Parekh ji of this word curiosity. You know, whether it is a curiosity in the sense of what does it really mean? If you look, obviously there's a connection, there's a contact, or listen to the sounds, or listen and then whatever sounds are there, you're just available, you have your senses open. Or is it more focused? It is a curiosity, normally it's a curiosity about something, we are curious about it. Curious to know more, to go deeper, uh, to get somewhere. What is involved in this? Sajji, you have often used this word, and I'm not very sure. You also talked about motive. So yeah, I've no objection to motive as such, except that all objection to anything, things have consequences. So there's no, so it's not that what is right or what is wrong. There are simply consequences. If there is a motive, then it has consequences. That's all. But I would like to go a little more into this. Why is curiosity required, and what do we mean when we say it is important to be curious about something? Or have you Harshad ji, have you understood my question?
Yeah. Do you want me to answer?
Yeah,
Yes,
just
yes.
a little explore this. Yeah, because I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
this
Hmm.
because this has also
Hmm.
because curiosity also means you aim at something, or you're curious when you're studying something. You're curious, obviously, also to know more about.
Yeah.
Uh,
Not knowing more.
just
Yeah.
a little,
Yeah.
throw a little light on this.
Yeah. Oh, hello. Okay. Chabraji.
Just a sec. Just a sec. I think
Yeah.
somebody must have called, so the this thing goes down. Just a sec. Yeah, now volume goes down, so I can't hear.
Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah, now yes.
should I speak now, or somebody else would like to speak? Or you want me to
No
answer what
specific.
is
What
this?
I mean is,
Sir,
I
he
just
wanted to answer. He wants answer.
Yeah,
Chavda
answer.
sir
okay.
wants answer.
Yeah, what is the real purpose of our whole search or something like that? What we are searching?
No, in what way are you using this expression curiosity?
Curiosity. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
just
Um,
this little. Uh,
yes. Human
because
mind is
I often
curious.
heard you
Yeah. Yes.
use this.
Yes. Okay. So, are you able to hear, Chabraji?
Yes.
Okay. See, human mind is curious, and generally, the human mind is curious about what is happening outside, what is happening in politics or economics or science. Want to invent something new, and that is what we are taught in schools and colleges to do something new. Like when you want to work for PhD, like I did PhD, you have to invent something new which has not been done by other people, other scientists have not done, and then only it is accepted. So the human mind is curious, but generally it is curious about science or politics or economics or other things. But very few people are curious to look inward to see what is this, why these thoughts are coming, from where do they coming, what is the connection. Like if I am sitting here and all of a sudden I remember a song, then I wonder that from where does this come? Why out of hundreds of songs which I know, more than thousands of songs I know, why a particular song came to me without any reason? Or I have so many friends, and all of a sudden a friend comes uh, thinking about a friend, and then after some time a friend calls me like that. So sometimes I feel that we are not isolated, we are connected with the whole world around us, other human beings. And so the curiosity, what I call it, is to pick up something which pops up in the mind. And sometimes only two words comes and then it goes away. So I'm very curious to just uh, watch it, not to get anything out of it, but that increases your sense of attention to even the outside world. Because I found in my life that when I became curious to look inward, then it began to affect the way I look at the outside world also. And outside world look very beautiful. And there are some songs like that, that when there is a light in the mind, the whole world appears very bright and beautiful. So this has been experienced by many people, that the real thing is to find some treasure within, and there is a treasure buried within all human beings. But there are so many around it. There are many disturbing things like snakes, guarding, those bad feelings and all that. So when we try to look inward, we find something distracting, disturbing, and then we try to involve ourselves in some outward activity. So we are mostly trying to escape from our own selves. But if we are not frightened to look inside, even if it is very disturbing, then all these snakes which are guarding the treasure, they become like our friend, and then we really uh, feel the treasure buried within us. And that is what people had said, like Kabir and Mirabai. They have written songs that there is a treasure buried. Mirabai said, Ram Ratan Dan Payo, Kharche na Kute, Chor na Lute, Din Din Badat Savayo. That means there is a treasure which cannot be stolen, and it increases day by day, that feeling of happiness. So that is the real purpose of looking inward, is to be completely aware, and then there is a richness which comes within. Then all the richness of the outside world, it means nothing to you. If even gold and diamond means nothing to you. And that is what Kabir said, तेरे पास हीरे मोती मेरे मन मंदिर में ज्योति कौन हुआ धनवान. So people like this have lived in our country, in India, and I don't know about other country, but great people have discovered a treasure buried within themselves, and it cannot be touched just by wishing. One has to really go through carefully, look, and along with it, there must be goodness and love. Without that, all these powers and capacities, it means nothing. So all the stages, they said, even if you get some siddhi, don't think much about it, don't misuse it. So there is something within us, a different universe within us. And uh, if we are really interested, we can go very deep and find our connection with the whole humanity, you know. So you are the world, that is what Krishnaji says. That is not just a sentence. And when we feel that I am the world, then there is no conflict with the world, because then it means I am in conflict with myself, you know. So the main thing is to come to uh, truth, beauty, love, happiness, all that thing we are capable of, and we free from all these negative problems which affect humanity. So that is what I call curiosity, to look inward and get rid of all the negative things which we have accumulated. And that is what Krishnaji did in 1922, just before that thing happened, process. He had written a letter to Mary Luthien, uh, no, Emily Luthien, and saying that I have accumulated so many things, all, and I want to really look at it, and I want to be really free. And then something started happening. So it has to do with us. It will not come from outside, you know. It depends on our own. Somebody can point out like that. Thank you.
So essentially, if I understand you correctly, basically it's what sense of wonder
Yeah.
is, because if you don't want to say curiosity about something, there's a general sense of wonder. One is always basically curious, essentially curious, but probably it gets hijacked by that sense of curious about something, about this, about that. Whereas that sense, it's also sense of wonder,
Yes.
because everything seems to create that. If you are in contact and open to the whispers within, whispers outside, whatever is happening outside, if there's a certain quality of attention, certain quality of awareness, as looking at the whole field within and without, then there is very naturally a sense of wonder. So if that is what I understand, you are using, you're saying curiosity for that, right?
Yeah. Yes.
There's one Vaidi Murthy, I think, has a question. So let me
Yeah.
let
No, actually,
the hand
I'm
here.
Dinesh
Vaidi
Wagmare.
Murthy.
Yeah. Wagmar. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, sir, I want to discuss one thing
Yeah.
related to mind and
Little
brain.
louder. Ah.
Can you listen to me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you able to
Okay.
listen to me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
hear you. Yes, clearly.
I was working with the sound.
In
Yeah.
relation to mind and brain,
Yeah.
I want to discuss one thing about the
Yeah.
memory part. With the age, the memory becomes less. Another thing, so mind is related to brain. And Krishnamurti pointed out many times that we are talking of psychological memory and
Yes.
psychological time, not of the chronological time. But if we see actually, not theoretically, not if we see actually that chronological time is also made by man. It is only recorded, and that is recorded in brain only, or we are just recording it in the brain. Chronological time also, because there is nothing like time. It is only a change which we are recording since ages. Similarly, psychological time also, what he has pointed out, the psychological time is also the recording of the psychological events took place in the past. So both the things are recorded in the mind, and it is of similar nature. So how he is able to segregate that this is chronological time and this is psychological time, and psychological time can be you can get rid of, or you can free of the psychological memory just by looking at the truth of the fact. I want to discuss this, sir.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Can we look at that? Is this number 3? Is it some hand number 3? What does that mean? I
Yes,
see.
sir. There are three persons
Okay.
raising their
Who
hands.
want to talk?
Murthy, Mr. Anand.
Okay.
So that is the meaning of that.
Okay.
And
Okay. So
YD
let's look at
Murthy, N. Ramarao, and Anand. They are the
Okay.
three raising
Okay.
hands.
Okay.
After
So yeah, shall we look at it? Shall we look at this psychological memory or psychological time and chronological time?
Yes, yes.
Um, See, chronological time doesn't create any issue that I have an appointment tomorrow, or or 3 days later, or I had appointment with this person's last year also. All this memory, this is uh, in the functional domain. Um, but if there are memories of um, what the person said to me, or what impression I carried, and there are uh, positive vibes or negative vibes accumulating of those impressions. And so obviously you're in, I mean, one doesn't normally differentiate, or um, but this um, chronological, this yesterday, today, tomorrow, in the calendar, that doesn't seem to create any issue. But what does create an issue is what past intervening and coming in the way when I want to contact you, when I'm interacting with you, and past impressions that you said something unpleasant to me, and I'm still carrying and still have accumulated, and that's stored. Now, uh, whether that is, see, there, remembering that I have an appointment with you tomorrow makes sense. Otherwise, this will be dementia if I forget and I make or keep you waiting and then suddenly remember, oh, I was to meet you, but I forgot. So that is required there. But why should I accumulate memories in the psychological domain? Why should I, keep with me whether you hurt me, whether what you said was unpleasant to me or pleasant to me, and cling to that, and with that I come to you again, and so whether what function does it perform, what does it, does it meet any requirement, or it is dysfunctional? So it's, so that one can see, that what is functional in one area is not functional in another area, So in
No, what,
relationship,
what,
what is the role of
what,
thought? There is role
what
of
I
thought
meant
in
to say,
function.
what I want to discuss,
Yeah.
whether it is a chronological time or whether it is a psychological time, what he has referred, both are recorded in the memory and both are recordings only. So how can we say, how even Krishnamurti, I just want to explore, I want to discuss.
May
How
I
he says
respond
that,
to this question?
yes, sir, yes, sir,
Yeah,
please.
yeah, please,
Yes,
please,
Harshji.
please,
Yes, sir, please.
Okay.
Tankha sir, please,
All right.
Tankha sir, please, go ahead.
All right, I'll respond to this. See, firstly, just let's think of time. We develop our idea of time. I'm not saying psychological or chronological. We develop our idea of time by seeing change. We see the seasons come and go. We see things move from one place to another. Something changes. And the essence of time is change. And that's, we see people get older, we see things changing, and we say change takes place in time. So time is related to change. And in the external world, it makes sense. And we call that chronological time because we use clocks. Chronological means clocks. So that seeing changes in the external world, particularly changes that are repeated. A clock goes round and round and repeats its process. We see the earth go round and round, the seasons come and go, people buy. So that's all the essence of chronological time. Now, what do we mean by psychological time? We are now more difficult because there's nothing so clear and easy to be able to see the change in the psyche as we can see change in the, you're right, the psyche is also composed of memory and so on, but there's more to them than that. Krishnaji talks about psychological time. He doesn't talk so much about psychological memories as psychology. He doesn't use those words so much. He uses the word psychological time. Now, he refers to the idea that the psyche can change, that the self can change. And this is central to all these ideas of self-development, of attaining of attainment, of enlightenment, of nirvana, that the self can change. So the changing of the self in time is what he is referring to as psychological time. And this is, there are gurus who promise that, there are all kinds of things. You sit down and meditate in this, or you observe things, and the self will change. Particularly the self can be improved, or you can, so, and this seems to take place in time. Today, I'm not such a good person. Tomorrow, I will be a better person. This is what psychological time is about. Now, what I understand him to be saying, and to some extent from my own observation I see, is that firstly, what is the psyche? Is there such a fixed, constant thing, something that we can refer to? You know, as the self. And it turns out that if you observe that the self is not, this is one of the main things that Krishnamurti is telling us about. In the most extreme form, he will even say, you know, the self doesn't really exist. But at other times, it's constantly being formed and reformed. As the other gentleman was saying, the self is constantly, we are receiving things from others, we are giving to others. The self is not separated out. So as we seem to talk about it, I'm different from you and so on. It's not as definite as that. And it's not as fixed as that. There is a whole process going on in the mind of the constant formation, reinformation, change, just like the sea, waves coming in and out, mixing, swirling. That is the nature of the psychological world. And it's not even easy to say that this is myself or this is myself. So in that situation, understanding the whole nature of how the self creates, changes, mutates, distorts is the important thing. You can't fix the moment you fix something. It's like taking a photograph. I take a photograph of you one day, and I say, "That's you know, you're looking sad." And I say, "That's you." But next moment, you're not looking sad, so you're smiling. So is that you? So has a psychological change taken place? Difficult to say. It's that whole concept over there does not have the same kind of meaning as, you know, you see an apple and then the apple decays and it rots. And then that's a very different kind of movement. So in that sense of psychological change, we are extending our ideas of chronological change, getting older or things breaking or things being created into the psychological realm. That's why but that says is not the way that the psychological realm operates. The whole question, obviously, there is something like the self, but that's not such a fixed entity. It's a very fluid entity. It's always in change, and and we're affecting each other, and it's flowing in and out. It's like the ocean of self, and we partake of some part of it at one point, and something else at another point, and it's keep changing. And yes, we can try and fix it, we can try and freeze it, but it isn't of that nature at all. So to talk about the change of that thing in time is not capturing the essence of how the self operates.
Do you mean to say that? Do you mean to say that I can get a memory of say 10 years or old or say 20 years old in an instant? It can come to me in an instant. So is it similar to that what you are talking?
Well, I mean, that's one aspect of it. If you can detach your idea of self, and I tell you, this is not a very particularly difficult thing to do. Let me give you an example. Suppose you had bad experiences as a child, somebody mistreated you. Today, at that time, you had no idea what was happening. You didn't really understand. But today, if you want to, if you can detach yourself from the idea that this is me now, today, I'm feeling like this, and allow your mind to the memory to traverse back to when you were 10 years old and somebody in school was mistreating you, you will find that you can relive that. You can even understand the person. You can understand what was going on. It's is not a particular thing. And even psychiatrists use that to help you to understand what has happened to you and what has happened, and things that are, it's not such a difficult thing to detach yourself from your present self and move into a different part of yourself or your present idea of yourself. Mostly the self is the idea we have of ourselves. It's the image that we have of ourselves. I think I am a good person. So you can change your ideas all the time. But that's not psychological time. That's not this freedom from the self that Krishnamurti is talking about. So anyway, I don't know. This is my understanding of all of this.
Yeah, may I say something to
Sir,
this? See, it's the whole idea of, I think, becoming is involved, and
Yes.
see, I can say the same thing. Well, this thing, somebody says, "Oh, yes, I have done this," or so it can be a statement. Well, yes, I cooked the food today. It can be very functional, or it can, a lot of value can go into it. That, oh, I cooked. That's why it's implying, that's why it's so good, and or you're enjoying it and all. I cooked the food. Now, it's the same sentence basically, and but what is the, now this psyche attaching certain value to it is the part of that identification, and helping the self to come into a proper form and being.
Yes.
It can be simple functional thing. Well, it's
Yes.
kind of
No. Actually,
dominating. Who
I
did
was
it?
trying
Yes,
to I was trying to understand what Krishnamurti means by the mutation of the brain cells, because he is not saying the gradual change. He is saying that the mutation will take place. So, how can we
Yeah.
address to this?
Yeah.
sir, Mr. Murthy is waiting to ask the question. 3
Yeah.
persons already in queue. So we have to
Yeah.
attend them also, please.
yes.
Yeah. Yes.
So then we can go in Vagmare's question also. But after taking Murthy's question, first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Murthy, please go on.
Yeah, thank you,
Please
sir.
unmute
Uh,
yourself.
yeah, are you listening to me, sir?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Sir, my question is like this. Uh, Krishnaji talked about thought being aware of itself in some of his dialogues, and he was also very emphatic. It is not that the thinker is aware of thought, it is not that the self is aware of thought, but thought itself being aware of itself. And also he mentions, if the thought can be aware of itself, there is a possibility that thought can understand its limitation, and it will understand that it has made a mistake by coming into the psychological world, and therefore it can voluntarily, easily, without effort, exit from the psychological world. In one of the dialogues with Professor Krishna and David Moody, this issue was discussed, and Professor Krishna is of the view that thought being a subjective matter in the consciousness. He talks of two parts in the human consciousness. One is the subjective part created by thought, that is I, me, myself, and all the other chicanery created by thought, which are part of the human consciousness. And he says there is another part, the universal part, comprising of observation, awareness, attention, etc. So he is of the view that because thought is not a universal phenomena, is not a universal faculty, so there is no possibility of thought being aware of itself. My question is, when the self, which is a creation of human thought, is able to be aware of many things, like I am aware of my surroundings, I am aware of my pain in the body, I am aware of my thoughts, I am aware of my feelings, etc., then why can't thought be aware of itself? That's all, sir.
See, see, if one is not going into academic exercise, the same, if I go back to that example just now I gave, isn't it possible for the mind where it is attaching importance to that sense of I did something? Now, can't there be awareness of that at that very on the spur of the moment? You know, whether there is awareness of it, whether thought becomes aware of it, you know, but that possibility is there, you know, that mind attaching importance to something, just taking cognizance of what it is doing, what the thought that is emerging, that is being expressed, and the value being attached to it. This whole thing being appearing in certain light, you know, not being missed out. Now you may call it, there's a certain awareness, there's a light of awareness, this all appears in the light of awareness, or thought is becoming. Does it make sense? Harshi, you can also, yeah.
So
In
this
the
is
question,
it's a very complex question. You know, it's complex because we tend to use, as Chavlaji is pointing out, the word I in many ways. And even within the question, one may be using the word I in many ways. You know, I go to passport control when I come in at the airport and say, I'm an Indian, right? That's all. All I mean is I have well, actually, I don't. I have a British passport, so I should say I'm British. So, so that's already illustrates what I'm talking about, right? But when I watch India play England at cricket, I support the Indian team because I know the Indian team better, right? Now, when does this become a problem? So this is what I mean by the self is often defined just by the words that I'm using at the time. I'm referring to different things when I'm using the word I. It's not such a fixed entity. So one of the things we need to do is really to examine in each instance how we're using the word I. Now, does my saying that I'm Indian mean that I have to fight Pakistan? See, it's when I get that fixed on the idea that I'm Indian, and there is something like my country, and then people have fed into my mind all kinds of ideas of the honor of the country and the glory of protecting whatever and what, I don't know really, but those ideas are fed into one. And so there you are. And then soldiers are drilled, you know, every day. Things are repeated, so they are completely indoctrinated in fighting. So then they go and fight and die for the country, right? So you have to watch this whole movement of the self, how the self is being produced, how the self is being generated, what is reinforcing the self, what is dissolving the self, when is it relevant, when is it not. It's the whole question of the self. And in a way, that's what we are trying to do here. We are trying to understand the complexity of this idea. So we can't say simple things about it. It is that, or it isn't that. It's and there are even more aspects to this, which I don't want to go into it right now. Yeah.
Sir, but do you subscribe to the fact that there are two parts in the human consciousness? One is created by thought, which is a subjective part, and other is the universal part, which is given inherently to all human beings. But Krishnaji never talked about this. But
Okay, I can
Professor
say
Krishna,
something about that if you like. Yeah.
yeah.
I think that when I hear somebody saying that, my response is somebody is looking at the whole cosmos, at the universe, and he's making these statements. What could he mean? How do I understand? What does he mean? I'm not looking at the words so much in the definitions of the word. What does he mean by when he says that one part is subjective, one part is objective? This is what I mean. I understand by this. I may be wrong. I'm just trying to understand what somebody might mean by that. Is that there is something which is capable of seeing the truth of things. There is such a thing as truth. There is a truth of things. And this truth does not depend on me or you or anybody else. It is what is. And that is that, and we are capable of perceiving that. Things will get in the way, things will cloud and distort our vision. And we have to learn to not, our vision, how it cannot be distorted. But there is what is, right? Even Indian philosophy will say that. Everybody will say, there is what is, and this is not dependent on human beings. This exists independent of human beings. Then there is what we have, that a thought has created. Now let's forget the self for the moment. Think of atoms and molecules and so on. This is what scientists, they have observed phenomena in the natural world, and they have made some theories, and there's a way of describing it in terms of atoms. People used to describe it before in different ways. Now we are describing it today in terms of atoms. So yes, atoms and so on. And of course, you get the atom bomb and things like that out of that description. So in some ways, that's very real. It's very real and actual to say. You can measure it, you can control it, you can get energy out of it, that there are atoms and molecules. And yet, if that is only a description, that is only something that has been created. Tomorrow somebody will come, like Einstein appended the theories of gravity. Somebody will come and say, no, maybe we should describe it in a different way. And so this part is not, it is actually created in human thought. And as such, there is a difference between the order of the universe that is free of our perception, and then that which has been created and described by us. This is how I understand what he's saying.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Is there this number 2? Is it Mr. Anand or who is it? I see
No,
this.
there are just two people
raised.
who've raised their hand because they want to speak.
Yeah.
Anand sir.
Anand.
Sir, I just wanted to, what Chabra spoke earlier about curiosity. I wonder why we are not curious about the poverty which is there. Why I'm not curious about the suffering and misery of the people. Why is that, I'm happy with the explanations of the so-called religious people give, is what I'm looking at. I'm only looking at curiosity of what gives me my pleasure, my happiness. I'm not curious about the poverty, the violence, the greed which is there on this planet, the suffering which is taking place on the planet. Why don't I look at that? I'm only looking at a very minute, tiny part of what is my curiosity in these things which make me, gives me pleasure. And I'm happy with the explanation of somebody saying, don't have this or have this, or some so-called religious person. I don't understand that part. Over.
I must admit, I don't.
May I say something?
Yeah, please.
This poverty exists. There are very rich people on this earth, and there are very poor people. And this big gap between the two, the cause is in the human mind only, that people who are rich, they want to become richer, and so they don't care. So again, you have to look at the source from where these problems of poverty comes, or burning the forest, or eating meat. Everything, it comes from the human mind. And so root cause of all the problems which we see is in the mind. And that's why only when the mind is really free, it will not create more problems. That's what I feel.
So the child is very curious, sir. But we grown up, after we grow up, we are looking only for explanations. Can I look at that? What is what I'm saying, sir? When a child, when he's curious, I mean, he's so intense about it.
Yeah.
But we are not. We are looking for explanations. We are back to our conditioning. Can I see? That is my question, sir.
I don't think that we are looking for explanations. Maybe this is why I have some difficulty when you use the word I or we, because I'm not sure who you're talking about. Whether you're talking about yourself or you're talking about me as well, and all of us over here. I'm not looking for explanations.
Mm. Yes.
So we give explanations, isn't it? So why is the beggar on the road? Isn't it? We give explanations why that I mean cow is on the road. I mean we come out with explanations, or somebody gives us an explanation. When I quote Kabir, sir, can I look at that? I'm happy with that explanation. I mean, what Kabir is talking about, is saying about.
See, but you seem to be saying that when we give explanations, explanations are obviously not enough, right? That's what you're saying, right? And they don't actually affect change. They don't bring about any change in the situations. Yeah. And I think Harshadji's answer to you was that because to be able to bring about change, we have to look a little deeper at where the source of this is, why we are not curious, why we are not able to be effective, why we don't respond, why we ignore things. We have to look at the source of all of that, why that is happening. And as we look deeper at the source, we realize that all these things that are happening in the human mind. So then we have to look deeper and say, why is this happening in the human mind? What's going on in the human mind? That this is my mind, your mind, and it's happening in my mind. But when we then have to move from the particular to the general, meaning I can try and understand my body, but as I begin why I'm ill, what's wrong with me? But as I try and understand why I'm ill and what is wrong with me, I realize that I have to understand the way my body functions. And therefore, I start asking, how does the body function? What is healthy for the body? And then I realize that it's not just my body. To understand my body, I have to understand human bodies. I have to understand the way the body, not just my body functions, but the way the human body functions. And that, I think, once again, that is what Harshadji is saying, that we have to understand the human mind. We have to understand how these things happen in the human mind. Then we will be able to find how
Yeah.
these things happen.
So what I'm
Yeah.
asking is, as we
May
grow
I
up,
say
we are
one thing?
accumulating.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
I want see Gandhiji tried a lot to create harmony between Hindu and Muslim, and he tried so much. At the end of his life, he could not do it, and he was frustrated, and he said, what can I do? So the cause why Hindu and Muslim are fighting is in the mind, conditioning. So we have to go at the root where the problems lie, nationalism or this ideologies. So everything is comes from the human mind. That's why once we can really understand, we don't create problems. Even in our daily life of relationship, if somebody says something unpleasant, we don't get very angry if we have really looked at how this anger is arising, what is behind it. And there are so many hundreds of problems. You are talking about poverty, but there are so many problems. people are fighting, violence.
I'm saying, sir, one thing is when I say, and see, as I grow up, I mean, there's so much of accumulation of knowledge takes place, and I come out with answers. Can I look at that as a question? But whereas a child, when he's curious, he's very serious about it. He's very excited about it. I mean, he's not looking for any answers or explanations. So can I see the difference between a child who is very curious and a person who is grown up? I mean, who falls back on his knowledge which he has accumulated over a period of time, and also falls back on authority who says this is what it is, and I'm happy with that. That's what I'm trying to look at it.
Yeah. So that is what we are talking about when we say awareness, which is just looking at it, not explaining everything. But then again, you are asking question why there is poverty and looking at it. So you are also asking questions unnecessary instead of just looking. And in that looking, there is a solution.
That's
So
my conditioning, sir. I'm looking for the.
yeah,
See, I always have a goal. I'm always looking for a solution. When I say freedom is in the beginning, I mean my conditioning is, I mean, to reach that goal. It is always there. Can I look at that? I mean, it is easy for me to say to freedom is at the beginning, but I am conditioned to achieve, to strive, to reach that goal. Someone
so
said,
look at,
I mean, it's in the
yeah,
beginning. I may say that, but can I see my conditioning is that?
yep,
Of course you
you
can.
can, you can,
Yes, you
yeah,
can certainly look at your condition and see
yeah.
it.
Tankha sir, time is over, sir. So
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
right.
may I
fine.
Yeah,
request
yeah.
all the participants to continue this subject for the next week?
Uh,
Chabla sir, Harshad
all
Parekh sir,
right.
Tankha sir, can we continue it for another week?
We can, if people like who are happy with it, then why not? Let's continue. Yes.
The participants are asking the questions and time is
Yeah.
remaining short. So
Uh,
I think it should be continued with the. I ask apology to Chabla sir to give trouble
oh,
in
no.
this
Sir,
evening of.
sir, I am having a request to Mr. Harsh Tankha.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can he just throw us some light on this mutation of mind what Krishnamurti has talked? So he has been with
I think our
Krishnamurti for
time's
so
Sir,
up.
many
next
years.
Our time is up, but if you want
next
next
meeting.
time, we
Next
can do
time.
it.
In the next
Sir,
meeting, next
Yes.
meeting.
sir, Tankha sir, next meeting. Sir, next
Okay.
meeting, next
Mutation of brain
Thursday,
cells.
we will
Right.
be answering
Yeah.
this question because
Yeah.
Vagmari has got so many questions. You will be
Yeah.
there to answer them.
So next
So now
time,
let me finish this. Kamlesh,
next time we
yes,
all
next,
go through
next,
mutation.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah. No,
Next.
that can ask any question or anybody can ask any question and subject remains has got no meaning for us. But still, I welcome all the participants, all the questions. So
Thanks.
please close it. We are calling all the guest speakers on the next Thursday. Thank you
Thanks
very much.
for
Thank you
thanks
all.
all
Thank
the
you.
Thank you, everybody.
participants
Thank you.
and the
Thank you.
speakers.
Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Please close
Thank
it.
you,
Please.
everybody. Yeah.
I am very much thankful to Tankha sir, Parekh sir, and Chabla sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Close
you
it
for
now.
organizing it all. And yes,
Nice of you for saying, sweet of you for saying. Nobody has said yet to me. So I take it as a compliment. Thank you.
Great job, sir. Great job.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sir, please come in time. Anand sir, please come in time. Next Thursday. Today you are a bit late. I am expecting you all the way. Please close. Kamlesh sir, please close it.